draft order of business, which is document CPOD 2589/26. Pursuant to Article 43 of the Rules of Procedure of the Permanent Council, I submit the order of business to you for your consideration. Thank you very much. Seeing no comments, we can proceed to adopt the order of business. So adopted. Permanent representatives, ambassadors, delegates. At the outset, allow me to thank all of you for your commitment and constructive willingness that you've demonstrated throughout this negotiation process. The text that we are presenting today is a reflection of this collective work that is serious, transparent, and open. We've incorporated in a balanced manner the contributions and concerns of all member states. These were addressed in an inclusive, safe manner during negotiations, which concluded last Friday. The chair of the Permanent Council has tried to lead this process with that spirit, creating a space for open, orderly, and respectful dialogue to reach real, sustainable consensus for the organization. This exercise strengthened the contents of this resolution, which is being presented for your consideration today, and has also strengthened how the Permanent Council and CD work jointly. It shows that where there is the will, it is possible to build agreements that reflect our shared priorities, particularly on an issue as relevant as mandates, management, and strategic planning for the OAS. I would also like to express my deepest thanks to Ambassador Edison Lanza, Permanent Representative of Uruguay and Chair of CD and the CHAP. I thank him for his support, collaboration, and all of his efforts throughout the negotiation process, as well as for convening this joint meeting of both bodies. I would also like to thank Ambassador Luis Ernesto Vargas, Permanent Representative of Colombia, because it was under his time as chair that this Permanent Council began its work on this resolution, and the ambassador's contribution to this negotiation process was also very valuable. Thank you very much, Ambassador, to you and your team. I would also like to express special thanks to my team, which has provided key ongoing work to support this process, as well as the Secretariat of the Permanent Council, especially Rodrigo Cortés, the technical team led by the ASG, Laura Gil. Thank you for all of the ongoing support we've received from the Secretariat. I would also like to thank all of the interpreters for their important contributions, and I thank them for their support during this exercise. It was key and helped the negotiation process be collaborative for all member states. Thank you very much for your professionalism, which allowed this dialogue to take place on equal footing for all representatives. We trust that this text will allow us to move forward in an orderly, responsible fashion, one that is consistent with the challenges that our organization is facing. I will now give the floor to Ambassador Edison Lanza, Permanent Representative of Uruguay and Chair of CD, with whom I have the honor of co-chairing this session today. Ambassador, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, Assistant Secretary General and colleagues. It is an honor to co-chair this joint session, which has been convened to consider the draft resolution mandates management, which will be submitted to the next General Assembly for consideration. I would like to echo the words of thanks and acknowledgement of Ambassador Solano and Chair and the Ambassador of Colombia. This process was not resolved in just a week. It took several months of negotiations, and it started under the chairmanship of Dr. Vargas in the Permanent Council. There were contributions also from the delegation of Brazil. Ambassador Belli provided a great deal of assistance and support based on previous negotiations to get this text on the table. And of course, Ambassador Solano, thank you so much for your leadership and your willingness and openness to work together jointly with both councils, not just at this protocol session, but also in all of the other sessions that we've held. I'd also like to thank all delegations who took part in these negotiations. They were very active in finding a solution and having a consensus text. And that is no small feat. It allowed us to address the present and future of the organization in a responsible manner. During complex times of negotiation, I appreciate greatly the openness and willingness that we saw during the informal session to produce a text in a timely fashion. And now we have the final text in front of us. I think this process reflects the spirit of dialogue, cooperation, and constructive work. This is related to the strategic plan and other future financial plans for the organization, and all the draft resolution reflects all of that. Thank you again, Chair, for giving me the floor. Back to you. Thank you, Ambassador. As you'll recall, the negotiation process ended last Friday, and we reached a pre-agreement on most of the text. There's one paragraph that has been left ad ref. We consulted with the delegation of the Bahamas, and I'd like to report that as of yesterday, Ambassador Chet Namor confirmed that in the interest of this spirit of consensus, which is characteristic of his delegation, the Bahamas is now in a position to lift its ad ref and join this consensus text. And I'd like to express my deepest thanks. Also on behalf of the chair of CD, thank you so much to the delegation of the Bahamas for their willingness to work constructively to reach consensus, which is essential for us, reflecting the coordination and dialogue that we've enjoyed. And this text was discussed at length and incorporates the concerns of member states. So it is very important for us for this to be a consensus document, and we really appreciate the constructive spirit of the delegation of the Bahamas and of all delegations. In that regard, I'd like to ask delegations if we can approve this draft resolution entitled Mandates Management, which was reached a pre-agreement last Friday during the informal meeting convened by the chairs of both councils with the participation of all delegations. This document is CP/Doc 6185/26, Rev 2. Under the rules of the Permanent Council, I ask if we can submit this draft resolution to the 52nd session of the General Assembly, which will be held in June in Panama. Seeing no objections, this text is hereby approved by consensus. Thank you very much. So agreed. I would like to open the floor now to see if anyone wishes to speak at this time. Seeing no requests for the floor, allow me once again to thank Ambassador Lanza, Chair of CD, and chair of the CHAP, and I thank all delegations for their active participation during the negotiation process. I'd like to inform you that we will take a few moments to be able to move to the regular meeting of the Permanent Council, which will start in a few moments. In the meantime, the Secretariat will turn over the room. We have Costa Rican coffee and a few snacks that the mission of Costa Rica very kindly brought so that we can get some energy and start the next meeting at 10 a.m. This session is hereby adjourned.
Hello, hello. Gusto verte. quorum. I hope you've enjoyed the Costa Rican coffee that is in the lobby.
Buenas.
So hello again. Let us do our best to work through the draft order of business, adopting it to begin with. The Secretariat informs me that we do have a quorum. So given that, we can formally declare this regular meeting of the Permanent Council open. Based on Article 43 of our regulations, I am putting to you the order of business, which, as you see, is identified with the CPOD 2590/26. That is the number of the document, and if you have no objections thereto, I would ask that we hereby approve it. Thank you. It's approved. Let me begin by expressing my and our deep condolences to the delegation of Haiti, as well as to the government and people of that country that suffered through April 26, 26, given the Henri Christophe tragedy that occurred and that led to so many people who were hurt and killed. This Permanent Council expresses its sincere solidarity and sympathy and condolences to the people of Haiti and particularly to the victims and their families. We are with you in your grief. Let me now ask you whether you can agree with what is stated in Article 46 bis of our Rules of Procedure. This is something that we do regularly when there are meetings and we look at this. We look at 46 bis, which I am now addressing, to see whether this plenary understands that the exception can be offered to Mexico and Ecuador, so that as permanent representatives, they can each speak up to a total of 3 minutes with regard to items 2 and 3 of our agenda, which we have just adopted. If this can be allowed on an exceptional basis, we would also like to remember that in Article 46 of the rules, we have a maximum of 10 minutes that can be granted to Mr. Miguel Ángel Reyes Moncayo, who wishes to address item 3 of this agenda, representing Mexico, as I say. Without objection, it is so decided. We move to item 2. And as our order of business states, and given the request that we've received from the delegation of Ecuador on behalf of the ENE group of friends to support the use of Spanish, as stated in Resolution 3046, adopted by the General Assembly, we will now celebrate the first week of the Spanish language in the OAS, which you may remember Peru first put to us. And we would like to honor that resolution 30 46th of the General Assembly have a number of items on our program that will bring that to mind. But let me state that this is not simply a protocolary matter. Please understand that this is a highly political matter, very deeply political, because the language in which we think, in which we converse, in which we exchange views and move forward is not anything neutral. It is a means of growth, of understanding, and the production of our papers is rooted deeply in the Spanish language in this building. It's a decision that was taken from a strategic standpoint, and it means a lot to the Americas that we inhabit. And so, as I was commenting, as the General Assembly agreed in Antigua and Barbuda last year, what we want to do now is to focus on that issue, to give it more thought, and in that context, hear the various speakers that will address us today. I have no doubt that they will each bring out the value of Spanish in this hemisphere. So distinguished friends, observers, this is the first meeting that is being held since Article 46 bis of our regulation was adopted. I said just a minute ago that this article, and as it's been reported and changed, will speak to the various elements that we have that allow us to meet and speak in what for many of us is our mother tongue. So let us ask those delegations that are interested in so doing to share with us your statements, and please do it before the end of business today, so that we know what you will have shared with us orally, and so that we can see how this Article 46 bis is being implemented. Let me begin by turning your attention to a video. I'm going to ask the Secretariat to please show it. Mr. Leonardo Valencia is an author and a literary critic in Ecuador. We'll be pleased to see that now.
Buenos días. Quiero agradecer.
A very good morning to all of you. I want to thank Ambassador Alejandra Solana, Chair of the Permanent Council, and the ENE Circle, and the delegation of Ecuador at the OAS, and every one of you who has helped us speak to you from Quito, Ecuador. I, as an author, have been weighing and immersing myself in the years and in the cultures going far, far back in history. This is not something that is a dead letter, as it were. It is living. And this is what I would like to put to you, and do so in speaking, if you wish, outside borders, but very much in a spirit of movement. You may remember that that visionary vision of Jorge Luis Borges, the famous author, and found the Aleph in the place where he was staying, suddenly realized its impotent, its incredible power. And he said words to the effect, I saw a beautiful silver spider's web in the midst of a pyramid. I saw so many eyes looking at each other and at me as if we were looking at a mirror. I saw all the mirrors in the world, and I saw myself reflected in none of them. And yet 30 years ago, I saw more in the house that I had visited 30 years ago. I saw so much. I saw every one of the grains of sand. I saw in Inverness a woman that I met and that I will ever remember. That beautiful statement of Jorge Luis Borges, the great author, continued in his lyrical way. Borges certainly ties together a number of different sentences that generally would be separated by a period and capital letters, beginning the next sentence. But not here. A number of worlds are wrapped up and reflected in a single flow of language and of thought, with a current of a certain amount of despair. This may not be the correct way to spell it, according to some, but it certainly is the most inspiring way. From the very first lines of his magnum opus, 100 Years of Solitude, Cien Años de Soledad, he speaks to us of the future without telling us where we've come from. Garcia Marquez goes on to say, many years later, as I stood in front, as Aureliano Buendía, the colonel, stood in front of the firing squad, and he thought back to his childhood. Just in that sentence, we understood that the starting point was back then, when the person was a child. That would be the chronology. The link between the future and his unforgettable past remains the same. But beyond Jorge Luis Borges, that titan, we will also be celebrating the 50th year of the death of Lima. Lezama Lima spoke of the fact that Spanish mixes the Spanish Baroque of centuries ago with the sharpest and most recent present time. He wrote the novel Paradiso, Paradise. These three major magnum opus of the Spanish culture prompts us to look close at that legacy, which is ours, has been ours, and that brings together so many disparate worlds, yet one. This beautiful Castilian language, which is ours, of course, when considered on the one hand, as we look at artificial intelligence on the other, inspires us to look at the ambiguity in some, but to understand certainly that the human language isn't there only to communicate, as one might think. It offers a door to the unthinkable. It isn't just a question of what is certain, but rather what is possible, what one can dream, not what one has perhaps seen and touched. That is why it would be impossible to translate such poetry. To talk about tobacco, snow, and an unforgettable woman, as happens in the novel Aleph, is almost unthinkable. And to warp time, as happens in the great magnum opus, 100 Years of Solitude, is equally unthinkable, yet there. This is the beauty and the magic of this multiplicity, and prompts us to understand that the limits of artificial intelligence is cold. It is not warm. It is not welcoming. Now, I'm not here to fight against technology, please understand. I don't doubt that it's incredibly useful in other respects. But as against creative language and literature, it's a different world. Spanish in the Americas speaks to risk. It speaks to adventure. And I am not suggesting that the OAS set aside technology, but rather that it embrace it, but from the depths of our humanity. Here's the risk. Here's the challenge. Let us not settle for routine, bureaucratic language. If we really want to live and to survive the present into the future, we need to believe in the nomadic spirit of the voices that are in us and that go back centuries. The syntax of uncertainty included. To enumerate the impossible, to travel through the digital future may well be the place where we meet and lift up a mirror to our beautiful and unforgettable and irreplaceable language. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you, Ecuador, for ensuring that we could hear Mr. Valencia. It has been a great joy and a privilege to hear him. Please convey, delegation of Ecuador, the deepest gratitude of the Permanent Council to him. Now we would like to hear Reinaldo de Gracia, who is a specialist in Panamanian literature. And we shall hear him now. Rodolfo de Gracia. Rodolfo de Gracia. Thank you very much, Excellencies, ambassadors. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a changing world, an interconnected world, marked by science, technology, and migration that can never escape truth and post-truth. In that world, language, any language, all languages, will remain and must remain the means by which we communicate. Spanish includes 636 million speakers, of which a good number are native, that exist in the 5 continents, and very much so in all of the spheres, whether it's cybernetics or high literature. All those who learn Spanish and who seek to communicate in it will know what a challenge it is, and yet what a great joy it is. Spanish has been a means by which, in the New World, a great deal was communicated. I won't say that it's at the same level with Latin and French as a diplomatic language, but it certainly, from the 16th century on, el siglo de oro, as it's known in Spanish, the golden third century, has been key. Spanish has, therefore, an important role in the canon of principal languages in the world. There are 21 countries that have Spanish as their official language, and a very, very beautiful literature, highest quality, that speaks to the culture and the transcendental values that are held here without a paragon, picking up also the American spirit in all of the different cultures and races that find themselves here. New genre of literature and social communications continue, of course, to modernize and to go forward. But here, from Spain, we have Spanish that is rich not just quantitatively, but from the standpoint of its nuances. It's a set of mirrors held up and projects itself now as then in a manner that remains enriching, whether it's Cuba, Panama, or any other place in this hemisphere. There is enormous diversity and types of Spanish, but that does not weaken or water that language down. All the contrary. It is suggested that much of the, whether it's lyrical or news, is carried out on internet these days. Debates as well as intimate exchanges. And despite the great number of individuals who speak Spanish, well, there remain a great number of challenges to take up. The paradigm for Spanish speakers is now going through the question, how comfortable do you feel in the digital world? A different code, therefore, is being forged, depending on whether one wishes the message to be stronger or softer, more welcoming or hortatory, whether the matter is something that one wishes to hold up from a political standpoint or not. But these digital platforms prompts us, I do believe, not to forget the value of the oral Spanish, the oral speech. It is important to always remember the community that is speaking, that wishes to become better known. Spanish, as a language of knowledge and communication, is not only valuable from an individual standpoint on a one-to-one, but from culture to culture, as broad as the planet itself. Naturally, the overweening importance of the English language means that a great many people who speak Spanish don't necessarily have the array of scientific texts that there exists, for instance, in English, and yet haven't given up and continue to hold Spanish high. It's important for societies to be able to think and to create in their own native languages. Yet, alas, there is an inequality of knowledge because, as everyone knows, most publications are carried out in English. Whether it's in academia or in different research centers, we are trying very much in this hemisphere to uphold and undergird the use of the Spanish language. We must do so consciously so that it doesn't wither away. The future of Spanish will depend very, very much on the measures we take digitally and person to person.
Muchísimas gracias a la delegación de Panamá. Agradecemos.
Thank you very much to the delegation of Panama. Thank you very much for sharing this video, which has enriched our session today. And we would like to thank Rodolfo de Gracia Reinaldo for his participation. And we would now like to play another video from the Secretary General of the OAS, Albert Ramdin, who, due to scheduling commitments, is unable to join us today, but we are pleased to have his video message. And I would ask the Secretariat to please play the video at this time.
Excelencias, distinguidos
Excellencies, distinguished representatives, colleagues, on the occasion of Spanish Language Week at the Organization of American States, we are celebrating an important dimension of who we are as a hemisphere. At the outset, I would like to acknowledge the members of the ENYE Circle of Friends and the coordinator of that group, Ambassador Alejandra Solano, for all of their work to create a space within the OAS to promote, uphold, and recognize the value of Spanish, one of our official languages. In addition to being a language, Spanish is a shared memory. It is a living expression of our diversity. It is also a shared space where our societies can acknowledge one another, have dialogue, and build. It is based on Latin and has evolved over the centuries and is experiencing a new dynamic in the Americas. It has become a plural language enriched by many different cultures, traditions, and realities. Spanish, as it is spoken in the Americas, is not a uniform language, but it is a language that is deeply shared. It is a language that is able to adapt, incorporate other features, and evolve. And in this process, it is a key to identity and belonging for millions of people. As said by the Colombian writer Gabriel Garcia Marquez, the Spanish language is our shared homeland. This quote recognizes a cultural legacy and a contemporary reality, a language that connects territories, histories, and visions that may be different, and it helps provide consistency to this hemispheric space. This week we celebrate that richness and that diversity, and we are reaffirming the value of the Spanish language as an instrument for understanding, for coming together, for our states and our societies. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this message, Secretary General. It highlights the importance of the Spanish language within the hemisphere and in strengthening dialogue among member states. To conclude, I am pleased to offer the floor to Ambassador Monica Palencia, Permanent Representative of Ecuador, who will speak on behalf of the members of the ENYE Circle of Friends of the Spanish language. Ambassador Palencia, you have the floor, and you have 3 minutes to speak, pursuant to our rules of procedure. Thank you. Chair, Assistant Secretary General, Excellencies, today we recognize thinkers and writers using the Spanish language as a tool for peace. I am pleased to take the floor on behalf of the ENYE Circle of Friends of the Spanish language at the OAS. As part of the very first Spanish Language Week at the OAS, we highlight the value of Spanish as a language that facilitates dialogue, strengthens understanding, and helps build agreements within the inter-American system. Spanish is one of the official languages of this organization, and it is a marker of identity, culture, and thought. Its linguistic richness comes from all of our peoples, and there are contributions from indigenous languages. It is a shared legacy that provides cohesiveness to our societies and enriches dialogue in the hemisphere. In this context, the ENYE Circle has issued a declaration that we submit to this council. The declaration reaffirms Spanish as a language of diplomacy and knowledge. In a world that is increasingly measured by technology, it is key that our language be appropriately represented in AI, natural language processing, and digital platforms. The first Spanish Language Week is an expression of this organization's commitment to cultural diversity, multilingualism, and cooperation. The activities planned for this week by member states and observers are a testament to the shared interest in promoting Spanish as a language of meeting, cultural exchange, and international development. We also celebrate the fact that the OAS is promoting opportunities for learning Spanish within the organization. And this makes it possible for more staff members and members of our hemispheric community to access a language that strengthens regional integration. Madam Chair, today, peace can be built in Spanish and is achieved when words build bridges to overcome differences. As the Nobel Prize winner Oscar Arias said, dialogue in Spanish reflects the memory of our histories and offers the opportunity to build agreements. The NE Circle reaffirms its willingness to continue working in collaboration with the General Secretariat and with member states to strengthen the use of Spanish in the substantive work of our organization. No microphone for the speaker.
Muchísimas gracias a usted.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Valencia, for your remarks, and we take note of those remarks on behalf of the members of the NE Circle of Friendship of the Spanish language. Having fulfilled the mandate of Resolution 3046 of the General Assembly, we express all our thanks to the panelists for their presentations. We thank the Secretary General for his statement, as well as Ambassador Palencia on behalf of all of the members of the NE Circle of Friends of the Spanish Language. Thank you all for contributing to today's celebration. May this celebration continue to reaffirm the value of the Spanish language in the hemisphere as a cultural bridge that strengthens understanding, integration, and multilingualism in the Americas, promoting dialogue amongst nations and enriching our multilateral work in a spirit of cooperation that inspires the work of this organization. Thank you, one and all. Moving on with our order of business, the next item, and at the request of the delegation of Mexico, as chair of the Conference of States Parties of SIFTA and pro tem secretariat of the Consultative Committee of SIFTA, we will now move to the commemoration of the Inter-American Day against illicit manufacturing of and trafficking in firearms, as proclaimed by the General Assembly in Resolution 2925 of 2018. Similar to the previous point, I would just like to remind you that this commemoration falls under the provisions of Article 46 bis of the Rules of Procedure, an article that was recently adopted. We ask interested delegations to please submit their statements in writing to the Secretariat of the Permanent Council no later than COB today so that it can be incorporated into the minutes. To start this commemoration, I am pleased to welcome and offer the floor to Mr. Miguel Ángel Reyes Moncayo, alternate legal advisor for international disputes of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Mexico. He is joining us virtually. Sir, welcome to the Permanent Council of the OAS. You have the floor for up to 10 minutes. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. A very good morning, distinguished delegates. It is an honor to be with you today as part of this commemoration of the Inter-American Day against illicit manufacturing of and trafficking in firearms. This day is not just a commemoration, it's also an opportunity to recognize a serious reality that continues to claim lives and affecting our societies. It's an opportunity to reaffirm our conviction to fight this phenomenon together. Mexico recognizes that the illicit trafficking in firearms is an international crime that directly violates the well-being of our peoples. With the firm conviction of eradicating it and promoting Inter-American law in November of 2022, my country asked the Inter-American Court of Human Rights to issue a consultative opinion. Mexico went to the court to address matters related to the state's due diligence, to address the activities of the arms industry, and to discuss the liability of companies and resources available to victims of armed violence. The opinion affirms the rights of various individuals under the Inter-American Convention for Human Rights and the International Compact on Civil and Political Rights. On March 5, the court issued its consultative opinion on the liability of states in the area of human rights when it comes to trafficking in firearms. The court presented a fundamental premise. It recognizes the reality in our region, and this is no minor matter. This is based on a reality and technical findings by other fora and reaffirms the coherence of various laws. We recognize the valuable contributions of civil society organizations, individuals, and states who presented comments that were incorporated into this consultative opinion, which helps underscore the urgent need to address this issue in the hemisphere. The Inter-American Court has taken a decisive step through this opinion. Trafficking in firearms is not just a human security problem, it is also an issue related to being able to guarantee human rights. End of quote. The opinion also states that member states have the obligation to act with due diligence to ensure supervision and oversight of production of firearms to prevent them from being trafficked. End of quote. The court recognizes this in 4 key areas. First, the duty to regulate and implement rules regulating firearms and their impact on human rights. 2, oversight of companies that manufacture arms. 3, the need to ensure legal resources for victims of human rights violations linked to firearms. And 4, the importance of international cooperation. In the first area, the court invites us to all member states to implement the provisions of SIFTA, and the protocol against the manufacturing of and trafficking in firearms and ammunitions, the Convention of Palermo, as well as other relevant legal instruments. The court reiterates the need and importance of marking and identifying firearms, tracing, export controls, and classification of crimes. It's not just enough to have rules written on paper. Concrete actions are needed to prevent firearms from ending up in illegal markets. One of the most cross-cutting aspects that Mexico applauds, particularly, is the court's recognition that fighting this illicit trafficking is not just done through regulations by member states. It requires the co-responsibility of all stakeholders involved, including industry, because state control is just not enough. This brings us to the next 2 areas discussed by the court. These are closely linked to the activities of companies. The court clearly recognizes that production of firearms is no ordinary business activity. The court underscores, and I quote, based on the potential impact of that arms trafficking can have on human rights, the duty of oversight must be particularly rigorous. End of quote. Mexico fully agrees with that position. When there is greater risk, responsibility must also be greater. The message of the court is also clear when it comes to reparations. Effective legal resources need to be provided to victims of crimes related to firearms is especially important. This obligation cannot be fulfilled if victims don't have real access to justice. To reaffirm this, The court also said that it needs to ensure the independence of courts against any other political or economic interests. Mexico feels that laws providing immunity to private actors should not be obstacles to accountability for victims of human rights violations. In the last area, the importance of international cooperation, the court also has a clear message. No state can address this phenomenon alone. The court invites us to continue collaborating on a bilateral, regional, and international level to combat and eradicate the illicit manufacturing of and trafficking in firearms, munitions, and explosives. States need to provide responses to a phenomenon that knows no borders. One of the judges on the court also made a statement to complement the majority opinion. He focused on the protection of human rights, looking at cross-border business activities and providing reparations in the country of origin or the country of transit. Having access to firearms does not affect everyone equally. Certain vulnerable groups are affected more than others. In the minority opinion, he underscores the impacts on children and adolescents, as well as gender-based violence. He discusses how this impacts other human rights, the right to life, education, and health, among others. The consultative opinion will feed into the work of the consultative committee of SIFTA in the area of human rights. And we have our rapporteur working on this issue. This also underscores the importance of the momentum from this consultative opinion. It is issued at a time when the international community is refining its views with respect to companies that produce firearms, which could impact human rights. In this consultative opinion, Mexico feels that there is a North Star, a clear guide for us to move forward together towards peaceful societies where there is well-being in our region. Today, we are before a specific opportunity. We can translate the consultative opinion into concrete actions by states, but also hand in hand with the private sector. We need the involvement of industry to prevent human rights violations. To that end, Mexico calls upon one and all to join efforts and to build a truly shared response where member states, civil society, and the private sector each play their respective roles. The hemisphere is moving forward in this direction together because we need co-responsibility to transform this legal standard recognized by the Inter-American Court in a tangible reality that benefits our societies. I thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for the presentation and for joining us virtually at this important session. Next, we will hear from Mr. Mr. Nicolas Florquin, Head of Data and Analytics at the Small Arms Survey. He is also joining us virtually. Mr. Florquin, welcome to the Permanent Council. You have the floor and you may speak for up to 7 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, distinguished representatives. It's a great honor to be here. I will just wait maybe for my PowerPoint to be projected, please. Thank you. So it's a great honor to be here. I'm having just a little bit of echo, if that can be solved at by the tech. But meanwhile, I will speak today about the context of firearms trafficking in Latin America and the Caribbean. I work for the Small Arms Survey. We are a Center for Applied Knowledge in Geneva, Switzerland. But what I'm about to present is based on multi-year cooperation with a range of regional organizations and civil society institutes in the Americas and in the Caribbean. And so I just want to highlight that it's knowledge that was produced in an inclusive manner with these partners. Next slide, please. Thank you. To go over the context of armed violence and remind you that the region really stands out at the international level because of its not only high homicide rates, and you see here the different subregions of the Americas featuring at the high spectrum of firearm homicide rates, but also of overall homicide rates, but also the proportion of homicides perpetrated by firearms. And so this clearly demonstrates the need to better understand and prevent the use of illicit firearms or traffic firearms or illicitly manufactured firearms in crime and in homicides, given this important proportion um, that is valid across subregions. Next slide, please. In terms of some of the trends that we have seen recently, and one that we've tried to examine in partnership with a range of institutions in Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia in particular, whose logo you see here, um, is the issue of military style firearms. They tend to catch the media headlines because military style rifles and machine guns are usually quite impressive in photos and make a lot of noise in the media. Well, we try to collect data to look at whether these weapons were indeed being more frequently used in crime. And in general, we found that this is correct. There is growing prevalence overall of such firearms being in official seizures. It's of course very uneven from country to country. It really depends in the country, but also in the subregions. Here you have some data that our partner Instituto Sala Paz in Brazil collected in 4 states in southeast Brazil, where we found even in that subnational area of Brazil some quite some stark differences in how prevalent military-style firearms were in seizures, but overall, an increase. For example, you see for Rio de Janeiro, the proportion increased to reach almost 11% in 2023. Another area of concern is the proliferation of more diverse and high-quality so-called privately made firearms. So this is where illicit manufacturing comes into play. What we're seeing as a worrying trend is the increase in counterfeit firearms being used in crime, but also so-called ghost guns, where firearms are assembled with industrial parts and components that are trafficked from abroad, and sometimes assembled together with privately made, locally made other parts to make basically fully unserialized weapons that are more difficult to trace because they don't have serial numbers. Next slide, please. We have seen also similar trends in the Caribbean, where we worked also with a range of regional organizations such as CARICOM Impacts and the Caribbean Public Health Agency, as well as the University of the West Indies. There, the rates of violence have also increased, have increased quite dramatically since the COVID era. In 2023, 2024, the aggregate homicide rate for the CARICOM area doubled compared to the pre-COVID period. Also of concern is that 86% of the homicides in the region for 2023, 2024 in the CARICOM region involve firearms, and so this is also an upward trend in terms of how frequently firearms are being used in the region. Together with our partner, we also try to look beyond the direct impact on homicides and casualties. And we worked through our partners to do field research in hospitals in 3 countries, and to basically look at the sort of socioeconomic costs caused by the violence, and considering as an example just the direct medical costs of treating one victim of a firearm injury. In the 3 countries under study, we saw that that was equivalent to 3 times the average healthcare expenditure per capita in Barbados, for example, but that ratio went up to 8 times in Jamaica. So when you think about the significant public resources that have to be devoted to basically manage the effects of gun violence in these countries, I think that also highlights the importance to take preventative measures and also look at the supply chains and prevent the trafficking and illicit production of these firearms. The trends that we saw for Latin America in terms of the increasing use of military rifles, the variety of privately made firearms were also visible in the Caribbean. Obviously, these are general trends, so there's variations between countries. Another trend we were also able to document in the Caribbean is an increase in seizures in large capacity magazines. So these are magazines that can hold um, more than 10, but sometimes 30 or even more than 50 rounds in a single magazine, which allows the shooter to be able to shoot much more ammunition in one shooting incident. Next slide, please. I will conclude it with a couple data observations as a researcher. Um, I would say that the in terms of documenting the specific types and models of firearms that are being seized in the region, it was possible to do, and it was possible to do to a similar level of detail as we do in other regions, including in Europe where I'm based, for example. However, that data is not ready for that kind of analysis. So you still need ad hoc projects. You need experts to access the raw data and analyze it to be
Excuse me,
able to.
Mr. Florkin, we need to conclude the 7 minutes. Can you please send us your remarks? Maybe you can also share with us the presentation. The time is up. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias a
Thank you very much to Mr. Florkin for his presentation. We've asked him to please provide to us his presentation. To conclude our panel, I am pleased to welcome the Secretary of Multidimensional Security of the OAS General Secretariat, Mr. Ivan Marquez, and he has 7 minutes for his presentation. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Excellencies, participants. It's an honor to speak to you today to commemorate the Inter-American Day Against Illicit Manufacturing of and Trafficking in Firearms, as established by the OAS General Assembly in 2018. This date calls upon us to strengthen our efforts to address one of the main threats to peace in our hemisphere. I've dedicated a good part of my professional life to fighting armed violence. It's an honor to serve the OAS and continue addressing this issue on our region. As mentioned, the Americas are facing an alarming reality. The constant flows of firearms, illicit firearms, munitions, and explosives cause violence, undermine democratic governance, and undermine citizens' trust in government. These are not isolated phenomena or actors. They are involved in organized crime that seek to protect their illicit routes, intimidate communities, and engage in illicit activity. For this reason, addressing illicit flows is not just an ancillary issue. It's a key part of the fight against transnational organized crime. During the life cycle of arms in our region, there are weaknesses exploited by criminal groups, obsolete laws, limited capacity when it comes to tracing and marking and stockpile management, as well as fragmented databases that prevent effective tracing, as well as illicit markets that arise due to insufficient supervision and oversight. Along borders, these criminal networks use advanced technologies to exchange information. And in the justice systems, very few seized weapons are traced or marked, which leads to a loss of information and perpetration of these networks, I'd like to underscore two additional elements. First, when it comes to ammunition, firearms receive more attention, but ammunition is a silent facilitator of violence. It is difficult to trace their commercial activity, and marking is not required in many countries. Next, explosives. They are also on the rise, and there are regulatory gaps such as regulation of chemical precursors, and this means our states are vulnerable. The Inter-American system offers a concrete tool to address this. It has CIFTA, the first regional convention that addresses in a comprehensive manner firearms, ammunition, and explosives. There are 31 states parties. CIFTA is the very basis of this system, and it has requirements when it comes to stockpile management, marking, and tracing. It is not just a regulation, it also has operational instruments that were promoted by the OAS, and allow me to cite some of those. In a study on illicit trafficking of and manufacturing in firearms, with the assistance of Mexico, we are working on a tool to help member states better prevent these illicit flows and strengthen their public policies. There's also an assistance programs known as PACAN, which provides comprehensive support for legislative reforms, tracing, marking, and regional cooperation, as well as prosecution. It is supported by the EU and the government of Italy. Its impact has been tangible. There are 29 states that have benefited from this, and over 6,000 staff members trained, and tracing of over 5,000 firearms and many tons of ammunition. At the strategic level, CIFTA also has sub-regional roadmaps, which are an effective mechanism for coordination in the Caribbean, Central America, the Dominican Republic, and now work is beginning in the Andean community. These roadmaps establish structured frameworks led by governments to define long-term cooperation between national authorities and international partners with objectives and shared indicators. It translates political commitments into concrete priorities, strengthens co-responsibility, and reduces fragmentation and duplication of efforts. This silence allows illicit trafficking to continue when information is fragmented. The Inter-American system, particularly CIFTA, offers us an architecture that allows us to better coordinate and take on our shared responsibilities. The tools are there. They're out there. The legal frameworks are there. They exist. What we need is a political commitment over time, bolstered by technical evidence and our regional architecture. The SMS of the OAS will continue to support member states with technical assistance, operational tools, and regional cooperation on an ongoing basis. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias a usted, señor secretario Mar.
Secretary Marquez, thank you very much indeed, not least for your exquisite respect for the use of time, let alone the very interesting issues they have raised. And I speak to, on behalf of all of us, I'm sure, thanking those who are working within the Secretariat on so many issues, and not least the critical issue of firearms. We know that this Permanent Council is eager to hear Ambassador Encinas, and you have the floor, sir. 3 minutes, in fact, for the reading of a statement in compliance with the 46B. You have the floor, Ambassador. Microphone. Thank you very much indeed, Chair. In the framework of the American Day for Fighting Firearms, Antigua, Barbuda, Belize, Colombia, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Grenada, Jamaica, Mexico, Panama, Peru, the Dominican Republic, St. Christopher Nevis, St. Lucia, and Uruguay reaffirm their commitment to build peace and the rule of law throughout the hemisphere. This is an opportunity that we are given yet again to assess the terrible erosion that is being caused by firearms traffic in this hemisphere, not least with regard to organized crime and the loss of life. The illegal production of firearms is a transnational challenge that demands sustained and coordinated response on the part of us all. The manufacturing and illicit trafficking of firearms not only build increasing security, but weakens our institutions, hampers our development, and affects in a very unfair manner those who will suffer the most. So illicit firearms and the vulnerabilities that are specific to the Central American and Caribbean countries are foremost in our thoughts. And we here reiterate our commitment to uphold the international organizations that have for so long committed themselves to fight this illicit trafficking, including the Inter-American Convention on against the manufacturing of explosives and other related firearms. We call on the various mechanisms of international cooperation that speak to better exchange of information that will allow us to track the illegal flow of arms to better effect. On this day, we call on each of us to do more if we possibly can and bend over backwards to try to stop this terrible trafficking that is such a criminal phenomenon. We must be more effective in this regard. The building of a more peaceful hemisphere can only happen if we all make it happen, and if we all do it together, fighting against the manufacturing and illicit trafficking in these firearms. Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador, says the chair, and thank you, Mexico, for coordinating this joint declaration that several member states have crafted to mark this day. We therefore express our pleasure in having spoken on Resolution 2925 of the General Assembly, and very much thank Mexico for having led the interventions on this subject. We understand that ongoing efforts must remain to prevent and counteract the manufacturing and the selling of illicit firearms. We need to work more to strengthen our hemispheric cooperation, to do better in terms of information and the development of capacities everywhere. Dear friends, this is the first time that we can say we are implementing Article 46 bis. And I hope that this clear improvement in the manner in which we're using our rules and regulations in this hallowed hall is going to help us all to do better with the resources we have available. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Colombia. It was a terrific initiative that you have put forward just recently. And I'm sure I can thank each one of you, not only those who have spoken, but each one of you who said, yes, let's work on this commemoration. Thank you for your for your discipline and your very keen attention to the time available. Let me now turn to issues that the CAP has raised. Ambassador Benoni Belli, the representative of Brazil, is going to speak to the matter to review decisions that were taken last April 14th. There was a note distributed by CAP under CP INF 1091126, 10911/26. So let me first ask the Permanent Council if it's in a position to accept the recommendation of CAP such that the strategic plan of the OAS for the period 2026 to 2030 that you have available to you in CP Doc 6198/26 should be put to the General Commission of the Permanent Council for its own analysis in order to come up with a revised version of this text in the second semester of the year, dealing particularly on the subjects that CD considers falls under its particular purview. I'd like to know whether you can all approve this decision. Does anybody wish to speak? Silence is consent, ladies and gentlemen. So it is. Thank you very much. Let me, secondly, ask whether you can now approve the document that reads authorization to use the resources of the sub-reserve form for the recovery of indirect costs to finance a study on accessibility to the Museum of Art of the Americas. This would uphold the law on Americans with disabilities that you have set forth in CP Cap 4242/26 Rev 1. Can you approve this for handicapped access to the museum? Appears that's the case. That's great. Thank you. It's approved. And when we finish this type, we know that the Assistant Secretary General is going to speak to this document. But I'm moving right along. Finally, I'd like to ask the Permanent Council whether you consider that the appointment of Ms. Patricia Caim as General Inspector of the General Secretariat can be approved, and if that is the case, if we can transmit that formal approval by the Secretary General and have the person formally named such. Without any observation to the contrary, it is so decided. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to ask the Permanent Council whether the recommendation of CAP can be deemed as met in the document titled Program Budget for the Organization for 2026, Section Romans 3, Paragraph 1, Line E, in relation to the presentation of the updated Code of Ethics of the General Secretariat. Do note that given this, and given the decision that the CAP, if you would agree, will hand down, a Code of Ethics shall be adopted once the Secretary General adopts that executive order and will say when it will be published. If that is the case, if you agree with this so that you can take note of the document, we will proceed accordingly. There appear to be no objections. It is so decided. Done. Thank you. And now, we know that Madam Secretary General would like to speak to the question that we have just covered. Assistant Secretary General, you have the floor. Thank you. Madam Chair, I take the floor merely to thank the member states for their support for this study on the debt that we have vis-a-vis people with disabilities. It was high time that we take these measures, and we hope that this decision can be carried forward in a competitive way and that we will have fewer exceptional cases to this. We aim here to accept exceptions, but alas, the exceptions have become routine. And alas, when that happens, at the end of the day, trust evaporates and bad habits are instaured. In the last weeks, the Secretary General has in fact completed a system to inform those who wish to proceed and be part of a competition. We're doing this too on the level of a competition with regard to the museum, by the way. Now, this is not a transcendental new reform, not at all. It's really going back to the basic roots that we have sustained all along. This is, frankly, an obligation that we have to ensure better management. It's nothing new, per se. We don't want exceptions to be the norm. We want exceptions to be truly exceptional, if I may say so. And to ensure that's the case, we're sure that all of us must do what we can to have a virtuous section, a very virtuous circle. We want the Secretary General, as well as my own office, the Assistancy, the Secretary General, to proceed as such. We want credibility to be strengthened, and that will only happen if we do so clearly and transparently in the person of the Secretary, the General Secretariat, and also in terms of the steps that we take that have to be coherent and that are decisive in that regard. You have taken a number of decisions in that regard, and I thank you for it. Thank you, Assistant Secretary General. We appreciate that input. I wonder whether we can move on to consider the next item. That brings us to item 5, which is the minutes of the Permanent Council. You have before you, ladies and gentlemen, for your approval, the following documents. These are minutes of the Permanent Council that are listed as follows. Acta 2450 for the special session of 18th September 2023. Acta 2451 of the regular session of 20th September of 2023. Acta 2453 of the special session of September 22nd, 2023, and finally Acta 2583 that reflects the decisions of the regular session that was held on the 4th of March, 2026. And if there is no objection, we consider all of this approved. Thanks very much. Done. Other business? It appears that we have brought our consideration of the agenda to an end today. I don't know if any of you have anything to say strictly on an informational basis, but I would like to just remind us that as per line C of Article 45 of the Rules of the Chairmanship, the Chair will politely stop any delegation that goes beyond 10 minutes and speaking not to questions that come under this order. This has to do with good time management. And this, by the way, I consider of great importance. There are channels, ladies and gentlemen. You have a means by which you can raise issues that are not strictly informational. It isn't that you have to hush. There's ways to do it, but not here. We wish for you to remember that in our regular agenda, you can bring these matters up and have them adopted within that regular agenda. We can also hold a special session. The bylaws also state that. Or you can consider these various different elements to be further studied by the various committees of the Permanent Council. Given that as a backdrop, I'm happy to give the floor to Haiti. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The delegation of Haiti would like to take the floor to thank the OAS for this very fine initiative under the discussion of our procedural rules and the roadmap that we wish to follow, and particularly with regard to what we are, in fact, facing in Port-au-Prince. The Jeff informations are coming in. The person who is supposed to deal with Haiti within the General Secretariat includes Alfredo Florid, and he too is in Haiti. So I wanted to take the floor to thank everyone here for the support that has been given so that we can continue to deal with this very important matter in Haiti. We need to bring peace back so that elections can be held again. Thank you. Thank you. Haiti, says the chair. Given what I have just stated, because this is a very important situation, what more than the importance of Haiti, we will include that matter on a regular agenda so that it can be dealt with, as you have suggested, on the basis of Dr. Roberto Jodic, who is now in Haiti, and when he comes back. And we would, as the chair, ask that he be able to come and speak to the Permanent Council. I think we would all appreciate it. And thank you. I'd give the floor now to Argentina. Well, good afternoon, and dear colleagues, I take the floor to inform you that the first anniversary of the death of Pope Francis was yesterday. He's been gone a year, and we know how much he did to lead the Catholic Church to be a point of reference to all, not just believers and members of the Catholic Church. We, and certainly those of us like myself who had the immense privilege and honor of having met His Holiness, will always remember his encyclicals and the important lessons that he shared with the world. Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Carlos Chang. It's very good that you raised this issue under other business. Very grateful for having mentioned that. It was indeed a key event, and we look back on His Holiness Francis and wish him to rest in peace. If no one else wishes to take the floor, no one seems to wish to speak to do. It's 11:22. What a record, ladies and gentlemen, for a regular meeting of this board. Thank you all for making it possible. The meeting stands adjourned.